The Do's and Don'ts newsletter proudly presents this story from issue number 2, published December 1st of 2023.
The Latent Image, with Jon Mullin. This month's column is entitled, Olympus Pen EES-2 Review, Advanced Technology, Batteries Not Required. Before the digital age, photos were taken on film. They required either a light meter to indicate what settings the camera needed to be set at, or a battery to power metering circuitry that automated the process. Then Olympus said, "Hold my beer. Sometimes things come out ahead of their time." This is one of those devices. But instead of being forgotten, it was cherished. Olympus released their EES line of pen cameras to quite a bit of love. The best part was that they were fully automatic but didn't need a battery, which could run out in the middle of a family reunion. This was a truly high-quality camera at a reasonable price, which was fully automatic and easy to use. The whole pen series were known as half-frame cameras, which splits the standard landscape frame of 35mm film, measuring 36 by 24mm, into a smaller 18 by 24mm portrait frame. Because of the splitting of frames, you would get twice as many photos on a roll of film. A 36 exposure roll netted you 72 photos. Olympus did release the Trip 35 after the pen using the exact same technology, but these were full-frame cameras, a term we still use today, meaning a 36 exposure roll would yield 36 exposures. We're not here to talk about the Trip 35 though, we're here for that classic pen goodness. How in the world does the Pen EES-2, from the 1960s, have the technology to be fully automatic with no batteries? There couldn't be a microchip that processed data as there wasn't a battery to power it. The answer is quite simple, a basic light meter like we mentioned above. A light meter is a device that tells a photographer how to set a camera to properly expose the image. The most basic units work by using selenium light cells to collect light. These light cells generate a small charge that moves a lightweight needle across a guide printed on the device. Where the needle points indicates which settings the camera needs to produce a properly exposed image. Taking a closer look at the front of the camera shows a clear bubbled ring around the lens. These bubbles are selenium light sensors, just like in a light meter. These sensors are enough to power an internal light meter with the same type of needle. Using this simple tool, the camera has all it needs to create a mechanical system that can tell it how to expose the image. A lot happens in the process of pressing the shutter button. As the shutter button is pressed, the needle is immediately locked into place. Then an exposure arm with stepped notches moves up to interact with the needle. These stepped notches tell the camera two things: how long to expose the photo and how wide the aperture needs to be. Once the needle is locked by the exposure arm, further pressing the shutter button does a couple more things. First, it opens the aperture to its intended position, which limits the amount of light that comes through the lens. The brighter the ambient light, the further the needle extends and the more the aperture narrows. The needle's location on the exposure arm also tells the camera which of its two shutter speeds to fire at. A set of gears are activated based on how far the needle is down the exposure arm. This doesn't speed up the shutter, it actually does the opposite. It slows the speed of the shutter by adding weight to it. By limiting how far the aperture opens and which systems are activated, the camera can figure out how to properly expose the image. Pressing the shutter button all the way down releases the shutter mechanism and resets it back to its home position. Then simply winding the film to the next frame resets the shutter for the next shot. It's not all perfection, sometimes you just need more light. When the camera cannot properly expose the scene, it will simply throw up a red flag, visible in the viewfinder. The camera also has a limited ASA range, now called ISO, of 25 to 400. This limited ASA range can lead to those red flags being thrown up when you least expect it. I find that at ASA 400 I can usually shoot indoors in a decently lit room, so that's a big plus. Keep in mind not all EES cameras had the same ASA ranges, so pay attention when picking one up. The first model, the Pen EES, could only handle a maximum ASA of 200. One thing that a light meter can't do is autofocus. You have to do that part all on your own. Once you get the hang of it though, it is actually fairly simple, and there are examples on the focus ring to help you out. So the camera is actually not fully automatic, I lied a bit there. The film advance, film rewind, focus, and shutter release are all mechanically controlled by the user. To most people though, it's still extremely easy to use compared to most cameras of the time. So why write about this camera? Simple. It's a technological marvel for the time. The camera does the math for exposure all without using any circuitry, using selenium light cells to power a hidden light meter to automate its most difficult processes. The Olympus Pen EES-2 makes photography accessible and fun for all. It's a true computer in your pocket, without the fancy microchips. As for me, I use it as my everyday camera. I might be a photographer that can shoot manually on the fly with his fancy digital cameras, but even I just want to take photos and capture the moment without always having to think too hard.
About Jon Mullin. Jon has been photographing professionally since 2008, but has been surrounded all his life by the small and quirky point-and-shoot Kodaks that his father collected. Now he photographs pets and people in unique and interesting ways. Jon's website can be found at jonmullin.com.
The Do's and Don'ts team consists of Grizzly Adam, editor, publisher, writer; Jon Mullin, assistant editor, writer; Plendlful, consulting editor; Joe Collett, associate publisher, writer; BlueMSX, writer; Yousef, writer. Visit our website at dosandon'tstopmywebcommunity.org. And don't forget to write to us, submit your retro memory, or most importantly, sign up for the newsletter. The Dos and Don'ts Retro newsletter is published the first of each month. Subscribers get early access.